Christianity is not a blind belief. Contrary to the opinion of a lot of skeptics and atheists, we don't believe just because we went to Bible school as a kid and we fell in love with these fairy tales.
Now, Spencer, you seem like a nice enough guy. I know you mean well, but you can't actually speak for why all Christians do or don't believe, for the reasons that they came to believe, just as I couldn't describe why all non-Christians don't believe. There are almost as many reasons there are people who don't believe in different flavors and things. So, Spencer, there are many Christians who will profess loudly that the reason that they have, there's nothing about evidence as to why they believe. They had an experience. If you believe J. Warner Wallace, the cold case detective, and some of the research that and Sean McDowell have done, although I don't think they shared it in paper form, the top reasons why North Americans who say they're Christians say that they're Christians are because they were either raised in it or that they had some kind of experience that led them to believe it, or that they just find social utility in it. Those are the top reasons. Evidence doesn't even come in the top three. I'm not sure where it lands on the list, but it's not in the top three. So that's awesome that perhaps you, or perhaps you came to Christianity one way and the evidence really backed up and affirmed later what you did, but it's the Holy Spirit that brought you there. It's likely not evidence. I have yet to find anyone who said that it was purely evidence and not the work of the Holy Spirit. So it's great that you're going to try and categorize, I guess, all Christianity as being intellectual and reason based, but it simply isn't. I'm not trying to say what percentage is or isn't, but you can't speak for everyone. Not all Christians.
In fact, when you really dive into it, the evidence of the life and the resurrection of Jesus is so compelling that it's reasonable and rational to at least consider the idea of the Christian God.
Okay, that's a whole different evidential standard. You are now saying that the evidence is strong enough that you are rational to consider it. Now, that's a whole different level of evidential standard than to say, "Oh, you're rational to think it's true," or you're rational to not think it's true even more strongly, right? Basically your level of preponderance, is it rational to consider it? Now, almost everything can be considered. I should consider, is the earth flat? I can consider, does astrology do anything? I can consider whether crystals work. I can consider all kinds of notions, and those are all worth considering. So, pretty low evidential bar that you just admitted. Off we go.
Hurdle that a lot of people can't get over is the idea of undeniable proof. Well, if there's
Okay, I don't know what you mean quantitatively by a lot. Perhaps the circles that you're running in, that the non-believers express that they want absolute truth. I'm guessing that they don't mean that. If you were to pin them down and follow up, ask them follow-up questions on that, for example, or a lot of people haven't really thought through epistemology and how we come to these conclusions. But absolute proof, I think what they probably mean by that is some single thing that they could really hang their hat on and just convince them in one fell swoop, and that would be great. And or have some kind of piece of evidence that is really difficult to deny as opposed to very easy to deny, which seems to be the bulk of the arguments that people put forth for God. Anyway, anecdotally, you're saying I haven't run into any such people that say I need absolute proof. What people want, that I'm in the circles that I run in and notice, is that people want sufficient evidence. So sufficient evidence isn't the same as absolute proof, but perhaps this is just semantic, and we'll see what you say.
any room for doubt, I'm not going to believe it.
Okay, that's pretty harsh. Any room for doubt, and I'm not going to believe it. Well, that's a pretty high bar. Now, I would want to think that if there's anything in the universe that could clear such a bar, it would be the all-powerful, all-knowing creator of the universe. You would think that while nothing else could be proven absolutely, outside of math, which is a whole separate view of the word proof, that the God would be the thing. But I think you're right. I think probably if someone's standard is no possible doubt, that's probably that kind of person probably isn't really seeking truth that much. I'm with you on that. let's talk about courts and that kind of thing.
That logic, if you're on the jury for a murder case and there's a suspect and he has fingerprints at the scene, he has no alibi for the time of the crime, he has a motive against the victim, and there's eyewitness testimony of him coming and going from the murder scene, you're still going to say, no, he's innocent because there's no video evidence of undeniable proof that he.
So let me just cut you off there. Sorry about that. When you are talking about a criminal trial, in North America at least, typically the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's not beyond a possible doubt. So a possible doubt is that, when someone from Star Trek beamed into the room and, killed them and beamed away, or, that something equally crazy. That's a possible doubt. Sure, it's possible that that happened, or a time traveler did something, or someone who could turn themselves invisible, was also in the room. There's a lot, sure, possible doubts. You want reasonable doubts is the preponderance of evidence in criminal trials. Now, in civil trials, typically the standard is closer to what's called preponderance of evidence, and that is, if you had to put a percentage on it, it's like more likely than not. So 51% is all you need often in a civil trial. It's like, more likely than not, one side or the other is correct. Now, that tends to be where I find Christians want me to evaluate the historicity of Jesus's claims, right? That you want preponderance of evidence. If it's 51%, then you should just consider Jesus to be true. They're not even at that. No one's even presented to me this reasonable doubt aspect of Jesus' divinity in those claims. I would love for someone to even get me to the no reasonable doubt, because I've got many very, very reasonable doubts. I haven't even got to anyone who's get to me the preponderance of evidence. So the fact that you're complaining about someone who has this absolute proof standard of evidence, that seems to be a irrelevant complaint at this point. Not important because you're not reaching these other standards. Let's see what you say.
He did the crime. If you ask me, that's choosing to be blind.
And again, that would be someone who would be disobeying jury orders, and with someone who they wouldn't even want on a jury, someone who is going to basically say, "No, I'm going to be sticking the mud about possible juries." That's the way life goes. And if you've come across such people, I would equally admonish such a person. I think they're not truth seeking if that is their standard. But again, how about if you just get me to preponderance before you complain that I want absolute proof?
It takes courage to humble yourself and follow the evidence and just see where it leads.
Okay. So that's basically just an ad for credulity. Why don't you just humble yourselves and stop having such a high standard of evidence? We don't need our God to raise himself to a high standard of evidence. We need you humans to lower your standards. And then God becomes evidence when you lower the standards enough. And I maybe should have had my low bar bill clip. If there's just one chance in a million Christianity's true, I'm going to believe it. So says William Lane Craig and other people. I don't know. What do you think? Are you such a person that you want God to be proven beyond all possible doubt to absolute certainty, no reason for doubt? Or are you a truth seeker who is willing to go beyond a reasonable doubt, or maybe even the preponderance of evidence? Or am I looking at this all wrong? Am I misusing this court analogy that Spencer brought up here and abusing it? What do you think?